Welcome to the Prep Pigskin Report podcast, hosted by Papa Pig himself, Paul Rudy.
Welcome to episode 1 of the KUSI Prep Pigskin Report podcast. Normally, it would be me and Bert Grossman. Bert Grossman has an engagement. So episode 1, Nick Polino is riding shotgun. He is the boy wonder to my Batman. Nick, what are we talking about?
Well, we're going to talk about how this all got started 23 some odd years ago.
Yeah, actually, it dates back farther. The first inklings of a high school show started when we were working at WEVU, the ABC affiliate in Fort Myers, Florida. And we started a show, and you know, high school football in Florida, pretty darn good, at least as far as the skilled positions were concerned. It was like a track meet. Not a lot of good linemen, but boy, did they have stud wide receivers and running backs. And we were a small 3-man sports department. We had 4 working field cameras, I think. And on Friday nights, we would all go out. I would shoot 1 game, everybody else would shoot 2, and then we did a show built around that. We would do pre-produced features, much like we do now. It was not nearly as refined as the PPR has become, but that was the inkling of the first high school show. Then I went to Kansas City and we kind of refined it a little bit more, got to LA and didn't do anything prep because I was working for the Fox Sports Net, which was all college and pros, and then came to San Diego and was watching a guy by the name of Rod Luck. And Rod would go out and shoot a bunch of games. He was just, you know, he was one of those guys who worked in the morning and came back and did the night show. And he did a bunch of games, very, what would be the word? Rough edges. I mean, he would, you know, shoot games, but he got to a bunch of games. And I thought, well, geez, if he can do it with 1 guy, what could we do with 3 or 4? And I was a 3rd man in the sports department here at KUSI, and we did a 12-minute sportscast covering highlights only, no features. And then I moved up the ranks here as people left, and Kurt Sandoval went on to Los Angeles. And I proposed to McKinnon's. I said, hey, you know, we could do a full 15 minutes with a bunch of games if you cut me some resources, blah, 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 and allow me to hire outside stringers. And it just grew. You know, I wish we could show you the cast of characters in the first year. We had, I mean, I had guys wearing ankle bracelets that they could only shoot the first half because their monitor would go off and they'd have to be home. And it just grew. It went from 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and then 30 minutes to 36 minutes, and then it went from 36 minutes to a 60-minute show, and then it went 60 to 65, and now it's a 75-minute extravaganza with a pre-PR in the early newscast. So it's become larger than life. When now we have, you know, at the height of this show, we would send out almost 28 camera crews. That's 28 camera people with a field producer. I mean, that's for a local affiliate to have that many people out working on a high school football show. I just don't think it's done, has been done, or will ever be done again in the United States.
So you talked about, you know, how it kept growing and everything, and obviously from a business and from your career perspective, it made sense to keep the show going. But you also had to have a love for football at some point along this journey.
Absolutely. My father played for the 1951 and 52 Kenosha Red Devils, widely regarded as the greatest high school football team ever known in the state of Wisconsin. Their average margin of victory was like 38 points. No one could touch them. They were back-to-back Big 8 champs. Everybody my dad's running backfield mate was Alan Amici, who went on to play for the Baltimore Colts and became an NFL Hall of Famer, played at the University of Wisconsin. And so my dad had the scrapbook this big, and my dad was a great player. He went to Marquette on a D1 scholarship. So I learned to read by reading his scrapbook, and consequently high school football was ingrained in my blood. Never had the talent level that he did, but I loved the play. I loved the X's and O's and the scheming of it, and more than anything, I liked the camaraderie of it. The lessons of life that you learn playing high school football are unparalleled. You learn how to win with grace, you learn how to lose with dignity, you learn how to conquer fear, you learn how to get up after you've been knocked down. The greatest lesson, dealing with fear. Because football is a collision sport, and it can be downright scary, and conquering your fear is a big lesson in life. I don't care what you do, if you run a floral shop or if you work on a skyscraper. Dealing with fear and learning how to control it and overcoming it is a really important part of the growing experience. Consequently, I became enamored with the sport and what it taught me. I wouldn't be sitting here without my limited, college and high school football experience. It's been important, and I know there are risks. I know moms and dads out there worry about injury, and they have every right to, and I understand that concern. But to me, the risk-reward it's so beneficial to play the game.
So, back when you first started the show, did you have? Everyone always asks, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Did you ever have a vision for the PPR back then?
No.
And I mean, from 15 minutes to 70, I mean, I don't think you could have ever.
I did not have that much self-awareness. We were just having fun, and it just became, as sponsors started to come aboard, it was very unique to be able to work for McKinnon Broadcasting because they saw the value in it as a branding tool for the station, a station that believes in local news, also believes in local sports. It's not just a motto to them, it's an actual business model. And the proof of that is that you don't see this show anywhere else because most general managers and owners, there's a better return on investment than a high school football show. This show has done okay, but there's easier ways to make a dollar on your dollar. And certainly we stretch the resources here to an absolute limit. It's a grind for 4 months, and you need to have special people who will endure that, both behind and in front of the camera. And I found myself in the right place at the right time in the right city. San Diego is just perfect for a show this size because it has enough schools, enough quality football, but you can get to every school and give them attention. In LA, we couldn't do it, or in Madison, Wisconsin, there's just not enough good high school football. It was a perfect storm. I ended up here working for people who saw value in it and saw value in me trying to do it, sponsors that believed in it, and then a viewing public that consumed it. And it's worked out. It's been a brilliant 23-year run. I don't know how much longer or how much farther it can go, but I sure hope to see it go another 23 years.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing you always talk about is, you can go to ESPN now and you can see the Padres highlights. You don't have to tune into KUSI to see the Padre highlights, but you can't tune into ESPN to see Cathedral play Lincoln as the game of the week.
And that's the lesson that Mike McKinnon taught me. He goes, hey, I don't want to see, at the time he was talking about my sportscast, he goes, I don't want to see your sportscast on SportsCenter. And that suddenly made sense. I can't compete with SportsCenter doing NFL or college sports or Major League Baseball. But where they can't compete with me is doing San Diego local sports. So to me, a winning sportscast or a winning high school show is having content that you don't see on the national cable shows. Even to this day, I tune in and watch big league network affiliate sportscasts, and they're filled with highlights that still are either on your phone or on your tablet or on cable news. And they're still doing the same thing. They think their twist is so much more clever that people are going to consume it. I think that is such a waste. If you're a local sports director or if you're a local high school football coordinator, make sure your content is unique to your market. And I think that is one of the key pillars to the success of KUSI Sports, specifically, and in the greater sense, the Prep Pigskin Report. We provide content you just can't find anywhere else.
Well, and from the PPR grew the ASR,
which expanded that whole thing, and now, I mean, for a little old independent TV station, I put the KUSI Sports Department up. I'm no longer in it, but even when I was in it, and certainly Brandon has carried the torch, what they do content-wise is incredibly unique, and I think that's why it's widely recognized as the best in the market.
So, as far as maybe gearing more towards the football side of things, so we've seen some great athletes over the years, Reggie Bush, Tyler Buckner, but you always say that you had a different best player you ever saw. Who was the best player you ever saw?
Well, to me, everyone says Reggie Bush, and Reggie was really, I mean, you look at his high school film, and he was the a great high school player. I thought he was even better collegiate player, and if not for the injuries, he owns a Super Bowl ring, so he would be the obvious choice. But the one that I always remembered, and I guess maybe because I didn't see Reggie in person as much as I saw P.T. Gates from what was then Marian Catholic, now Mater Dei. He was just a tough, he wasn't as big as Reggie, but it was as quick, and he played both ways. Reggie, I think, was just a running back, and I just admired a kid who would go up against other kids who were 50 or 40 pounds heavier than he was, and he would put his face mask right into their chest. He was just a tough SOB, and I always thought, pound for pound, P.T. Gates was the toughest high school player I saw in the 23-year history of the show. Now, late ad, that used to be my standard answer, but then I saw a kid by the name of Buckner play. And I'll tell you what, he's also in that conversation, because what he did in that playoff game against, help me out,
El Camino.
El Camino, was playing on a bum leg. That was like Tiger Woods' leg.
Yeah.
So now the three that I would be in that conversation are Reggie, P.T. Gates, and I might give the nod now to Tyler Buckner. Let's see what he does collegiately. But as far as the best high school player, pre-2010, I'd go P.T. Gates. Post-2010, Tyler Buckner.
So, and talk about, something that interests me as far as, it sounds like P.T. Gates was a great player. I've seen tons of highlights of him on our show, but a guy like that didn't get heavily recruited, and he was one of the best players you ever saw. Today, you see guys, everyone's getting recruited. If he grew up in a different era, would he have been a Division I
there were
player?
other issues. There's other things that factor in the recruiting. There's size requirements and this, that, the other thing. There's also grade requirements, and there are other aspects into the recruiting process that made P.T. Gates not as desirable as, say, other kids who might be of diminutive status but just as fast. So, the recruiting process has become much more refined, and now with social media and everything, no one wants to waste a scholarship at the D1 level. They're like pieces of gold. So you have to really investigate who you're going to offer to. And I think the background checks has become even more extreme. So I think it would even be tougher now to get recruited than it was back then.
So when you think about 23 years, do you have an all-time favorite memory?
Oh, absolutely. A couple of them.
Okay.
One of my early ones, my favorite one was we had the night both Reggie and Alex Smith were in New York for the Heisman Trophy presentation. Reggie must have been a sophomore and Alex was a junior or something like that, because Reggie won as a junior, I think, right? Well, guys, my memory's soft. It was the year Alex and Reggie were both in New York together, and we asked them to call. It happened to be on the same night they were in New York. Our Silver Pigskin Gala was taking place in this very studio, and we thought, how cool would it be if they called into the show and talked to our finalists? And I remember there was a young kid who was responsible. He had one job that night. I'm not going to say his name. His initials are TB, and not Tom Brady. And his job was to get the call and transfer it in so that we could record it, and at the same time pipe it into the studio. And he was like, okay, Paul, I got it. And I turned to whoever was sitting next to me and I said, I guarantee you he's going to disconnect the call. And sure enough, the room is quiet. And we go, ladies and gentlemen, we're going live to New York. Alex Smith and Reggie Bush are joining us on the phone. Guys, how you doing? And you can hear Reggie go, hey, Paul. And then, sure enough, he disconnected the call. Thankfully, we got him rehooked up. We got him on. And you could hear a pin drop in this room as Reggie and Alex spoke to the finalists about what it takes to get to the next level. And that was a magic moment in Gala history. And then the one that's more personal to me was my father had passed away, and he was a Navy guy. And we had just moved the Gala onto the Midway. And that's a big deal, being on the aircraft carrier. And my mother had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And she came to the Gala. These were going to be her last public appearances before the disease kicked in. And I found a picture of my dad holding me, wearing his Navy uniform, and I was just a little swaddling baby in his clothes, in his arms, and he was holding that picture. And I opened the gala with that picture, saying, "Who would have thunk that some 50 some odd years later, the boy in that man's arms would be hosting a high school football show inside a aircraft carrier?" And I looked at my mom, and I still get emotional. Her tears were coming down her face, and that was a magic moment that I will never forget.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard you get emotional.
Well,
so,
I mean,
that's how good of a story it is.
That was a power.
Yeah.
And God bless everybody who's involved in the show, because they made her feel like a superstar. They interviewed her on the red carpet, and I tell the story, and I still choke up all the time, because, now they're both gone, but at least she got to see, because that's a big deal to be on the midway. We had 800 people there that one night. That's coming to see a high school football show. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's
I thought that was a pretty darn special thing, and I always will be grateful to Mac McLaughlin and everybody at the Midway. They were such gracious hosts, and we were there for a period of time. But it just got to be so big that the show kept getting wider to get everybody in, because it's an aircraft carrier, it's a narrow hangar, and it just. Pretty soon we had people spread out 300 yards apart. So we're going to try something different. We're going to break some news next week on this podcast as it relates to the gala.
Wow, wonder what that could mean.
Yeah.
So maybe for somebody that doesn't know, they know what the show is, but they don't know what a Friday night looks like from your perspective or from a Red Jacket's perspective. Explain what a Red Jacket is, first of all, and then explain what it's like around 10:45.
Well, it's changed now. Back in the day, a Red Jacket is somebody who works on the show. Every year we hire about 20 or 30 kids from the high school to professional level, where they're either working maybe part-time at a radio station or TV station, and they're working for 10 hours a night on a Friday, and they wear the PPR Red Jacket. That's their signature uniform for the night. And then back in the day, before we had all this remote contribution options, they would come back to the studio, cut their highlights, and hand me a script, often penciled out. We have become much more sophisticated now, but back in the day, I'd be getting scraps of piece of paper 5, 15, 20 seconds before the highlights would air. And it was crazy to try and narrate highlights, sometimes with handwritten scratch notes. Now we have everything computerized. There's, instead of 50 or 60 people roaming in the studio, we have 5 or 10. But it was insane. People running around. It was just like broadcast news, where the episode where people would run in and say, and you know what? More times than not, that we would get it right. And every now and then we get a score backwards, or with this, that, and the other thing. But it was, I'll tell you what, the hour goes quickly, because you have to. There's a lot of screaming going on, and it's like a duck. Underneath, paddling like mad. On top, trying to keep as cool as possible.
But with all those people that have worked on the show, you say 20, 30 a year, how many of those people stuck around for a long time? And then how many of those people, their careers propelled even higher? No offense to you, but they're on MLB Network now.
Yeah. And that's not offense to me. That is a compliment to me. I'm beyond the stage of competing for who gets the highest rung on the ladder. I work with very limited skills personally. I've exceeded what I was supposed to be able to do in this business by a long shot. So, but you're not insulting me by saying several of the people that I've hired have gone on to bigger things. I take that as a compliment, because 1, I recognized it in them. 2, I think I helped develop them. And 3, I couldn't be prouder of the fact that they've gone on to do bigger things, just like someday you're going to go on to do bigger things. And Brandon has already taken over the market as my successor in sports. I am proud as punch at all these young men and women who have turned the PPR into a broadcast opportunity. And I think I have a pretty impressive coaching tree. Just if you look at other people who are photographers in this market, most of them wore a Red Jacket at one time. And I think I have a pretty good eye for recognizing who's going to make it and who's not going to make it. Not always right, not always, I get that. But I'll put my batting average up against anybody else who hires people for a living.
Are there any Red Jackets that you can think of in particular that worked on the show for a long period of time, went on to do something else that you still stay in contact with them?
Well,
Maybe like DeJuan or...
You know, DeJuan was, we snuck him into the station. He'd come in through the back door because he was too young to be inside the building. And that was back in the day when I was a little more reckless, and we would wait for all the suits to go home, and he would come in and work as my personal assistant at age 16. Now he's one of the leading news anchors in Raleigh, is it? Or
North Carolina.
Raleigh, North Carolina. He worked at KUSI for some time, got hired here eventually when he was old enough. And he's going to be a network news anchor soon. And we still stay in touch pretty regularly. I think that's a pretty impressive, cat.
Yeah.
But not everyone makes it in the TV business. They just make it big in other walks of life. And I don't want to embarrass anybody, but I get notes occasionally saying, "Hey, thanks for this lesson. I used to think you were the A1." Can I say? But you know what? Some of the things about showing up on time, writing handwritten notes to thank people for opportunities that led to job opportunities or employment. My mom taught me the most important thing in life is a handwritten thank you note. And for kids who are out there and who interview for jobs, the first thing you should do after you get done with that job opportunity is write your interviewer, write them a note thanking them for the opportunity and mention something in that interview that you liked or that you appreciated or learned. And to me, that will increase your chances of getting hired because nobody writes handwritten notes anymore. It's a lost art. And if that's the lesson that I try to, have I taught it to you?
Yeah, that's how I do mine now.
Yeah, and I know it's time consuming, and I know we all have lost our ability to write handwritten notes because we don't use that skill anymore, but trust me, that's the most important thing you're going to learn from me.
All right, back to some football questions.
Sure.
Would you say that your favorite moments of the show are the commitments we have on live television?
Absolutely. And we're going to have one this Friday.
Yep. But just thinking back, because you always say the big one was the Oklahoma trio.
Right.
Is that what got PPR?
No.
Todd Doxey.
Todd Doxey was the first one, and the Todd Doxey because it became a tragedy because he drowned while on campus in a swimming accident, and unfortunately, when you die young, you live in infamy or dying young. I think of Jimmy Dean and all these people. You become bigger than life. So consequently, the Todd Doxey story was the one that triggered every ensuing commitment. And I always remember him because we didn't even have the idea. He said, "Hey, can I make the commitment on the PPR gala?" And we thought, "Hey, why didn't we think of that?" And he was such a gracious young man, and I got to know him a little bit. And it just broke my heart when I heard that he had passed in a swimming accident. But his mark on the show is that now it's the cool thing to do is to commit to your college on KUSI. And we have done not one, or we haven't done 10, we haven't done 20, we've done a lot. And I bet you we're over 50 college commitments on a variety of sports.
I'd say probably even more than that.
Yeah, and it's been cool. And you become, the reason why I like it is because you become part of the kid's life. The most important decision of their life is connected to you, and they're not going to forget that ever. It's the single biggest decision they've had their first 18 years of their life. So,
yeah, I think especially now with social media, we get so many more eyeballs on this show because people see, oh, they committed on live television,
right.
And I think.
And just so quickly, if you're watching this. Hey, that offer stands. If you're getting your college education paid for by your athletic ability, and you want to talk about it on the PPR or KUSI, and you want to make it known either with me or Brandon, man, please. It doesn't matter what sport you play. All that matters is no one knows where you're going, and you will let you have this platform to make your announcement known.
Cool. Well, is there anything else you want to add throughout the years?
No, I think we've the PPR has grown from being just a high school football show. I think we're part of the fabric of the community here. And I am honored to have, now I'm closing in on 400 hours of the show. I've missed 1 hour, so thank the good Lord for my health and the fact that people still want to watch. The show has evolved, it's changing. This year is going to be far different than 2019 when we last did a full PPR. Technology, we're trying a lot of new things. Social media footprint is increasing. Game commitment is coming down because of just the sheer economics of TV post-pandemic. But I think it's still going to be an entertaining 75 minutes, and we encourage everybody to watch.
Yeah, quickly, just talk about that community aspect of it, the viewing parties and people getting together to watch. I mean, I think any kid would dream to be able to see themselves on TV after they just had a 70-yard touchdown catch.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think, just to wrap this up, the PPR is about making memories and recording those memories for posterity. We have cameras. There are athletic moments in my life that I wish I could have video proof of that, because no one sees it or remembers it like I do. I think that's what the PPR does. We are in the memory business, archiving memories and special moments in these young people's lives, positive moments in young people's lives. And I think that's why the public puts up with the fact that maybe we're not the slickest operation, but we certainly are the most San Diego operation. And I think on that scorecard, that's the connection with KUSI and its audience, the PPR and its audience.
Perfect.
That's episode 1 of the KUSI PPR podcast. Hope you watch it.